In the dimly lit corridors of an antiquities shop nestled in the heart of Portland, Oregon, among shelves laden with forgotten relics and dust-covered artifacts, there sat a peculiar wooden box, unassuming in its appearance, yet steeped in a darkness that few would dare to acknowledge. Though its surface bore the marks of time, with faded engravings and worn edges, there was something about it, something unseen, something felt rather than perceived that sent an involuntary shiver down the spine of those who lingered too long in its presence. It was an object of quiet malevolence, a vessel of the unknown, a relic bound not just by nails and wood, but by something far more insidious, an ancient force, waiting, watching, whispering in the silence. The Dybbuk box, its story, as twisted as the gnarled roots of a tree long starved of light, begins in 2003, when a man named Kevin Mannis, a writer and owner of a modest furniture refinishing business, attended an estate sale in Portland, lured by the promise of rare antiques and forgotten treasures, never suspecting that one particular item would come to define his very understanding of reality itself. Among the various trinkets and heirlooms scattered across the home, he discovered an antique wooden wine cabinet, unremarkable at first glance, yet imbued with an eerie, almost palpable presence. It was an object that had survived decades, possibly centuries, carrying with it a weight that was neither physical nor explainable, but undeniably real. The woman conducting the sale, an elderly figure whose wrinkled hands trembled ever so slightly as she recounted the box's history, warned him, her voice thick with an accent shaped by a lifetime of hardship, that it had once belonged to her grandmother, a Polish Holocaust survivor, a woman who had fled from unspeakable horrors, carrying only this small wooden chest as a remnant of a past better left undisturbed. She was adamant, almost desperate, that the box should never be opened, that it contained something ancient, something that should remain sealed for all eternity. And it was not merely a keepsake, not just an antique, but a prison one that, should it ever be unlocked, would unleash something beyond comprehension. But Mannis, ever the skeptic, dismissed the warnings, attributing them to old-world superstition, a relic of bygone fears and ghost stories meant to entertain rather than terrify. He purchased the box, ignoring the pleading gaze of the elderly woman as he carried it away, his mind already brimming with plans to restore and resell it, oblivious to the horror he had just invited into his life. The first signs were subtle, almost dismissible. A whisper of jasmine in the air where none should be, a fleeting scent of cat urine in the absence of any feline presence, a shadow moving just beyond the edge of his vision, dissolving into nothingness the moment he turned his head. Light bulbs shattering without provocation, cold spots manifesting in the warmest corners of his shop, tools vanishing only to reappear in places he was certain he had never set them. But the dreams were what finally shattered his skepticism, what forced him to confront the notion that he had made a terrible mistake, what made him realize that whatever he had brought into his life was not bound by logic, nor science, nor any earthly reason. Each night he found himself trapped in a suffocating darkness, a formless void in which he was not alone. From the shadows emerged a figure, an old woman, her skin shriveled and grey, her eyes sunken yet filled with a malevolent hunger, her lips curling into a smile that spoke not of warmth, but of cruel amusement. She would stand at the foot of his bed, watching, unmoving, until, without warning, she would lunge, her gnarled hands reaching for his throat, her fingers pressing into his flesh with a force that sent him jolting awake, gasping, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding like a drum of war. But it did not end with him. Friends who visited his shop reported similar nightmares, visions of the same spectral crone, standing in their rooms, whispering things they could not understand, yet felt in the marrow of their bones. Some awoke with scratches on their skin, others with bruises in places they could not explain, all of them with a sense of dread that clung to them long after they had left his presence. Terrified, Manus sought to rid himself of the box, gifting it to his mother on her birthday, hoping to pass it off as nothing more than an antique with an interesting, if ominous, history. But the moment she opened it, she collapsed, struck by an inexplicable stroke that left her paralyzed, unable to speak, her eyes wide with something that looked disturbingly like recognition, as though she had seen something. Something she was never meant to see. When she regained limited movement, she could only write 2 words on a slip of paper, words that chilled Manus to his core: hate gift. Desperate, he tried selling it to others, but each new owner returned it in a state of palpable fear, some refusing to explain what had happened, others too shaken to even speak of it. Finally, in a last-ditch effort to rid himself of the accursed object, he listed it on eBay, detailing its sinister history, hoping that someone, anyone, would take it far, far away from him. It was purchased by Jason Haxton, a museum curator, a man of science and reason, a skeptic who believed himself immune to superstition. Yet, within days of acquiring the box, he found himself plagued by an unrelenting illness. His skin broke out in inexplicable welts, his lungs constricted as though unseen hands were squeezing them shut. His dreams became a battleground in which an unseen force sought to claim him as its own. The air in his home grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence, a force that pressed against him, that watched him with unseen eyes, that whispered to him in the quiet hours of the night. Desperate, he sought the guidance of rabbis who performed an ancient sealing ritual, locking the Dybbuk box away in a golden-lined ark, hoping to contain whatever malevolence lurked within. And for a time the nightmare subsided, but the legend had already taken root, its tendrils stretching into the public consciousness, inspiring stories, investigations, and even the 2012 horror film The Possession, a dramatization of the box's dark history. A film that, if rumors are to be believed, carried with it its own share of curses, unexplained accidents on set, actors plagued by sudden illnesses, an eerie shadow that seemed to loom over the production, mirroring the very horrors it sought to depict. Yet, the most disturbing twist came years later, when Kevin Manus himself admitted, in a shocking confession, that the entire tale was a fabrication. A story he had crafted, a modern myth woven from threads of folklore and fiction. And yet, despite this revelation, the box remains an object of fear, an artifact that continues to unsettle those who come into contact with it. Perhaps it is the power of belief, the weight of fear made manifest, that sustains its legend. Or perhaps, just perhaps, Manus was lying, not to the world, but to himself, desperate to convince himself that the darkness he had unleashed was nothing more than his own creation. Even now, the Dybbuk box is said to rest in a hidden location, sealed, contained, yet never truly at rest. And as long as its story is told, as long as people believe in the whispers of the past, in the lingering shadows of ancient evils, in the things that lurk just beyond the veil of reason, the Dybbuk box will never truly be forgotten, nor will the thing that dwells within.